Hello everyone, this is Ms. Smith, and the purpose of this video is for us to discuss effective writing in the workplace and the writing process. Let's get started. It is important to recognize writing as an essential skill regardless of the career that you're seeking. You may be hired for a job and you may not be required, just based on your job description, to have to do a lot of writing. However, you always want to make sure that you are prepared to write should you need to. A lot of times, a person who is a good writer could be the person who is promoted to a higher position or given more responsibilities. So it's really important to be a solid writer, excuse me for that. And so, writing is an essential skill in the workplace. You want to make sure that you hone your writing skills. You want to make sure that you are solid in your grammar and in your use of sentence structure, all of that. Okay? Good communication is essential. And so in our textbook, there's a list on page 1 and it talks about how writing relates to other skills. You'll want to take a look at that. That's useful as well. And the book also talks about a recent Associated Press survey where most American workers need to improve their writing skills. And this survey was based on what employers said. And so employers are looking for people with strong writing skills. Again, it may not be a big part of your job description depending on the career that you're going into, but chances are you will have to write reports or summaries or invoices or many different things. And so we can't avoid writing in a professional life. We have to make sure that our writing skills are solid. But in our style of writing, technical or professional communication, your writing should be clear and concise and accurate and ethical. Okay? And it should also be persuasive when it needs to be persuasive. And so again, the style of communication that we do is geared toward problem solving, being informative, and then being persuasive. But our actual wording should be clear and concise and accurate. We should always be ethical. And then when we need to be persuasive. And so the book talks about 4 effective keys to writing. And this is kind of going over what we've already went through a little bit with our toolbox, but we see it again here. You want to determine who will read what you write, right? Remember, in order to be an effective communicator, and that includes being an effective writer, you have to know who your audience is, okay? You have to know who your message is targeted to. Why should they read what I write? And so you need to understand that practical purpose for why you communicate. Think of our triangle. Okay, what do I have to say to them? Now, on the back side of understanding the purpose for communicating, you actually need to formulate your message. That is going to help you be an effective writer. If you understand the reason why you're writing to someone, but you don't have a strong message that you formulated, it can fall flat and it can be ineffective. How can I best communicate? And this falls into selecting the appropriate style and tone. Style and tone will be so very, very, very important with writing. Your style and your tone can determine whether or not your writing is effective. That in addition to grammar and sentence structure, right? Making sure we have those universal concepts down. Your style and tone could definitely make a huge difference in the effectiveness of your writing. And so, when we talk about formulating your message, we want to remember that a message includes the scope and the details, as the book has taught us, and practical purposes of your communication. Okay? You must determine your audience before you can successfully craft your message. We've already said that. And you will need to adapt your message to fit your audience. A good communicator knows what he or she wants the message to accomplish and anticipates communication barriers. Now, we also have talked about the communication process, and in that process, we address communication barriers that can be internal or external. Okay, but as trained communicators, we need to be reminded of those things, and we need to recognize those things when we see them so that we can try to overcome that, so that we can accomplish what we want our message to accomplish through our communication. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So let's look at style versus tone. And so I said a moment ago that the style and the tone of your message can make all the difference in whether or not your message is effective. It's kind of like the old people used to say, the old people I grew up with anyway, used to say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. This is along those lines, okay? But there are two different concepts here. Style is one, tone is another, okay? Style refers to how something is written rather than what is written. Okay, and so style deals with paragraph construction, sentence length and patterns, and word choice. Now, you've heard me say this already several times in the video that you have to work on your grammar skills. Grammar actually is not a component in our class, but it is something that you will continue to be evaluated on for different assignments that you do. At this level of your English class, you are expected to have certain basic grammar skills nailed down. And if you don't, you want to take that initiative to seek out the resources that will help you improve your grammar and your writing. Okay? But your grammar and your writing will be very important because it tends to be more universal, at least in our American culture, okay? And so we don't ever want to use wording or use language that could be slang or abbreviated language like text speak or anything that would take away from the clarity of our message. We want to use words that when we look up that word in the dictionary, it means exactly what we want it to mean. Okay, so you have to become very careful in your word choice. That's your style. It refers to how something is written rather than what is written. Okay, making sure that you're following the standards, that you're using the right word choice, that you're using the language, the English language properly. Now, tone in writing is like tone of voice. It expresses your attitude towards a topic and toward your audience. Okay, if you write a message and it has a sour attitude behind it or a sarcastic attitude behind it, whoever receives that message will automatically think it's directed to them, right? As they should. And so you want your tone to be positive. You want your tone to be professional. Okay, and so if your tone is courteous, excuse me, courteous, that is going to foster goodwill. Remember, we talked about goodwill before. If it's harsh, it's going to take away, detract from the goodwill that you want to build with your audience. If your tone is diplomatic, that's a good thing. If it's abrupt, and it seems like you really don't have much to say or don't want to address whatever the situation is, and maybe you're even aggravated by it, then that's going to come through as well. Okay, and so you want to make sure that even if you are aggravated, and even if you are justifiably so aggravated, maybe somebody has done something, a coworker or a supervisor or a customer, and you are clearly right about how you feel. You still, as a professional, have to make sure that your tone is where it should be. You don't want sarcasm and anger to come through, not as a professional, okay? You want to always err on the side of trying to build goodwill. And so the book talks about some characteristics of job-related writing that I want us to take a look at. And these are just a few of them, but they provide practical information. Okay, job-related writing provides practical information, meaning it's action-oriented. It gives facts and not impressions. Okay, it uses concrete language and specific details. So when we talk about it giving facts and not impressions, think about it this way. Your readers will want solid information. They want tested information. They want factual information. They don't want you just to guesstimate what they should do or the next step they should take, right? They don't want that. They want you to make sure that you're telling them what is solid, information they can stand on, information that is reliable. And so you don't want to sound like you're uncertain. You want to use concrete language and specific details, and you want to be confident in what you communicate. And that goes back to our technical communication triangle, our professional communication triangle, where we were talking about being informed. Remember that? When you're an informed communicator, you do your work on the back end to make sure that you are informed, that you can give reliable, credible information to others. And in those moments when you don't have the answer, you let them know that honestly, but then you go find the answer. Okay? So another characteristic of job-related writing is to supply visuals to clarify and condense information. Like this PowerPoint. There is a textbook. Hopefully you have it. And hopefully you're reading it. But this visual is just for us to hit the high points. Now, there will be times when you need to create a graph or a chart or some type of visual. And sole purpose of that is to make that communication easier for your audience, okay? And so we'll look at that later when we talk about visuals. But a person could have to read maybe 2 pages of text, or you could take that 2 pages of text and put it into a visual if it's done correctly, and it would make it so much easier for them to understand. Okay? And so that is a characteristic of job-related writing. There may be times when you have to create charts or graphs or other visuals to clarify and condense information. Um, Job-related writing should give accurate measurements, okay? And this is dealing with numbers. Numbers are very convincing. If you give me a chart and I see a line, like a line chart, a line graph, and that line is going up, it's telling me that whatever is happening is probably advancing, whether it's something good or something bad. You want to be accurate with everything you put there, because if the reality is, that things are really not advancing, the product isn't selling, our profits aren't going up, whatever the case might be, you don't want to misrepresent that. Numbers are convincing. People will believe the numbers because they will believe that you generated those numbers through factual means. Okay? And so never ever be inaccurate with your numbers or with your measurements. State responsibilities precisely, okay, so that your audience understands your role and what they need to do as well if they have to take some action based on your communication. And persuade and offer recommendations when you need to. Okay, and this is going back to that persuasion part. Okay, and so again, you're informed, you have information that your audience does not have at the point in time when you begin to communicate. So you have that practical reason for communicating to them. And so a lot of times in the workplace especially, you have to convince or persuade your audience to take a certain action. Whether that certain action is to get their transmission flushed on the same day that they get their oil changed, or whether it is to also purchase this product at the same time that they're purchasing another product, or whether it is to join a specific organization that will give them more job training. Whatever the case might be, it could be something as simple as we want to convince you to be a part of this committee at work, or to attend our company picnic and bring a covered dish, right? It can be any number of things. But a lot of times in job-related writing, you're trying to get your audience to take some type of action, and that requires convincing the readers, or the customers or the clients that whatever you say requires their involvement. Okay, so those are some of the characteristics of job-related writing. But it's also really important that we remember that we must be ethical in the workplace. And we kind of alluded to this when we talked about accurate measurements, right? And using those numbers correctly because numbers are convincing. But the book has several pages about this, and I want you to make sure that you read those as well as a part of this chapter. But as a professional or technical communicator, and as a credible person, you should always make sure that your writing and behavior are ethical. Okay? This is one of those things that should go without saying, but in today's world we need to say it, unfortunately. Okay? And so remember that you are the informed writer or the informed communicator. Your audience is depending on your trustworthiness, and they will give you credibility initially, but you never want to do anything that would jeopardize your credibility, because once it's lost, you may never regain it. And you may also taint the image of the company you work for in addition to your own reputation if you are unethical. So when we say unethical, unethical writers are usually guilty of one or more of the following faults, which can conveniently, as the book mentions it, be listed as the 3 M's: misquoting information, misrepresenting information, or manipulating information. These are intentional things. No one is unethical by accident. If you are being unethical, you've made a choice to be unethical. You've made a choice to misquote something, to misrepresent something, to manipulate something. We're all human and we make mistakes. A mistake isn't necessarily unethical behavior, even though it can have, really heavy consequences depending on the mistake. But if you are being unethical, you're being intentional about it. You are trying to deceive your audience, and you are trying to get away with something that that you shouldn't be involved in. Okay, and so it's very important to be ethical in the work, ethical everywhere, but definitely in the workplace. And the book gives us some more examples, some more things we can look at, examples of writing ethically on the job, and they're on pages 27 through 29 in our textbook. So take a look at that as well. Now let's talk about the writing process. Okay, and so the writing process is a process that we want to use. Of course, we're going to be doing a whole lot of writing in this class, and it's going to prepare us for what's next with career, with school, with everything. But we have to understand the writing process because if you're anything like me, when you're given a writing assignment, you sometimes have to sit and look at a blank screen to figure out how you're going to tackle it. And sometimes for some of us, we dread writing so much that we will procrastinate. That's the word I'm looking for. We will procrastinate and put it off until the very last moment, and then we try to throw something together, and it's not our very best work. We haven't put enough time and energy into it. We were afraid of it, and we avoided it. Okay? The writing process can help us overcome those things, and this is why I want us to use the writing process in this course. So, what is the writing process? That's the question, right? And so, the writing process is um, what you need to do to produce your best possible written work. That's the whole purpose for it. The writing process exists to help you, the writer, produce your best possible written work. That's the whole purpose of it. And so, there are 5 steps of the writing process as I teach it. Different people will teach it differently. But if you follow these steps, they will help you produce your best possible written work. Now, let me say this up front, and I will probably say it again. You cannot wait until the last minute to try to implement the writing process. Okay? It's just not going to work out for you. It requires that you engage the writing process as soon as you know you have a writing assignment that's due. As soon as you know what that assignment is, you need to start on the writing process. You cannot accomplish all 5 of these steps in one night. Okay, or a few hours before deadline. And if you do, it will show up in your work and you won't get nearly as much out of this experience as you should. Okay, so 5 steps. Like I said, different people teach them differently. Sometimes they're 4 steps, sometimes they're 6 or 7 steps. This is how I teach the writing process, and these are the steps that I want you to know. Number 1 is pre-writing. Number 2 is drafting. Number 3 is revising. Number 4 is editing / proofreading, and number 5 is publishing. These are the 5 steps of the writing process. Now let's take a look at them in detail. So the writing process begins with pre-writing. And pre-writing is the planning phase. So think about it this way. When you are in the pre-writing stage, this is before you've actually written anything, hence the term pre-writing, and you're planning. But this is the point in time when you are first given your writing assignment. You are first given that writing assignment. This is the very beginning, okay? And you're trying to figure out what will be my topic, or if your topic has been given to you, how will I approach my topic? And you have to think about it. That's kind of where it all begins. You have to figure out what comes to mind when you're first given that topic and what direction you can take. Okay? And so, as a part of thinking and trying to figure out the direction you can take, there are a couple of pre-writing strategies that you can use. Some of these we've heard of, some of these we may not have. And so, brainstorming is one approach, one pre-writing strategy. When we brainstorm, what we're trying to do is get what's in our head onto a sheet of paper or a computer screen. It's essentially a brain dump. We're trying to get it out of our head onto a screen or onto a sheet of paper so that we can just see what's there, right, that we might be able to use. It's kind of we get it out of our head and we're picking and sorting through it to see if any of these leads can result in what we need it to be, right? A good approach to this assignment. And so with brainstorming, what you want to do is pull out a sheet of paper or open up a blank computer screen and just start putting down whatever comes to mind. whatever comes to mind. And it can be anything. Even if you're off on a tangent a little bit, and it's not always on topic, just put it down anyway. Let everything come out of your head. Okay? That's brainstorming. And then what you want to do is go back through it whenever you're done with brainstorming and just see if any of those things that were swirling around in your head could be a good approach or a good topic for your writing assignment. Now, with the mind mapping is really, really good for people who are visual. And the book gives us an example of mind mapping. When you mind map, you essentially take your topic or what you think might be your topic and you write it in the center of your paper, and then you draw a circle around it. And then you have different lines connecting related topics to it. Okay, so let's say, for example, that I gave you the topic sweet. That's it, just the word sweet. And you were responsible for finding an approach or direction for what you would write about based on that word alone, sweet, S-W-E-E-T. Okay, so let's say we wrote sweet in the middle of our page. We drew a big circle around it, and then we put a line from it, kind of like how we would draw the sun when we were little, with those little lines coming from it. And let's say in one of those little lines, when we think of the word sweet, we think of candy. Okay, let's say another line, we think of cakes. Okay, and say another line, we think of personality. A person can be a sweet person, sweet-natured person. Let's say another one of those little lines, we think of smells, like perfume or aromas that are sweet. Okay, and so let's say we go back to candy. Okay, and let's just say our brain just kind of naturally starts going from that direction. And let's say we think that, okay, there's hard candy and soft candy. So we draw a circle around candy, and then we just have some other lines extended from that circle. And so candy can be hard, it could be chewy, right? It can be, you know, very light in texture, like cotton candy. And we could just come up with all of these things that relate to candy. Okay, and so we can continue building out our mind map that way, and visually we can see where we have generated the most ideas. We may generate far more in the sub area of candy than we do in personality. Okay, and our book gives us more of a visual. I don't have a visual in this lecture here, but our book gives us a visual and an example of a mind map that you can refer to. Again, mind maps are really, really good if that's how you want to strategize on how you can approach your topic. Now, free writing is a lot like brainstorming. With brainstorming, though, you just let everything come out. With free writing, it tends to be timed, and you want to stay on topic as much as you can. And so, for example, with free writing, you may free write for 5 minutes at a time. Let's say you give yourself 15 minutes to try to figure out a direction for your topic. And you write your topic, the name of your topic, at the top of your page, or what you think will be your topic at the top of your page, and you just free write about it. Whatever comes to mind that is within the parameters of the assignment. You're not going off on tangents, but you're just writing those things down for 5 minutes, and then you stop. Then you read over what you've written and see if you have any kind of direction from what you've written, but then you go back to it for another 5 minutes. Okay, do the same exact thing. Free write, see what comes to mind, and read over it, and maybe do it a third time. Okay, so free writing is another strategy, but it's a little bit more structured than brainstorming. Web skimming is also recognized as another pre-writing strategy. Now, I don't really like to suggest that students use web skimming because it's so hard for us to determine sometimes at this point of our semester what is a credible source and what is a source that really will not be useful for academic purposes. Okay, and so it is really important then that instead of web skimming, or if you do web skim, that you're looking at websites that are solid, reputable websites, right, where you can get reliable information from. And it's just to kind of jog your memory. You're not trying to find somebody else to do the work for you. That is plagiarism and cheating. It will get you in trouble. You're just trying to generate ideas, okay? And so I would suggest that you stick with brainstorming, mind mapping, or free writing just to try to get you going. You want to do some research on the topic if you need to, that would be good. Also consider your audience at all times. And by the end of your pre-writing stage, you should be able to create some type of an outline. The book covers outlines as well. But consider an outline and create an outline that will help you to organize how you will approach your topic. You should have some type of a blueprint in the form of an outline by the time you're done with the pre-writing stage. Okay? Our next step is drafting. Drafting is exactly as it sounds. When you draft, you're creating like a rough draft of your assignment. And as a result, you're putting the information you've gathered from your pre-writing stage into your own words and into the format of the assignment. Okay? And so this is where you want to make sure that you take whatever direction you're going to go with your topic and you put it in the correct format of the assignment. For example, if I ask you to write me a 3-paragraph letter that follows full block format and uses ABC format, and you give me a 2-paragraph letter that has incorrect full block format, this will all make sense later, and does not use ABC format, then that is not what I've asked for. Even in the drafting stage, you want to make sure that whatever you put down as a rough draft is what I ask for. Now, I may or may not ask you to submit a rough draft to me for your assignment, but you're always welcome to create one and to come and talk with me about it. You can come to my office hours or you can contact me on the phone during office hours, and I would be happy to go over your draft with you to make sure you're heading in the right direction for that final draft that you're going to submit that will be graded. Okay? So if you want to talk with me about a draft, that's perfectly fine. Okay? And so when you draft, you want to make sure you put the information in the right format. And it's always important to just start writing, right? Your sentences, your grammar may not be perfect at the draft stage, but just get it on paper and to read aloud what you've written. When you read something out loud, your ear becomes a tool that can catch different problems or grammatical issues, okay? And so read it out loud. Step 3 is revising. You're just making that first draft better. Okay, that's what you're doing. You're rearranging words and sentences and paragraphs, replacing overused words. If there's a phrase that you say all the time, and we tend to write how we speak, so it's not really useful, make sure that you're using words that like I said, that you can find in the dictionary and have the correct meaning for. Okay, so make sure that you're using good language, and then just revise it. Go back over your draft and try to make it stronger. And again, read your assignment aloud to make sure it flows smoothly. Step 4 is editing/proofreading, and this is right before we're done. So we want to make sure our writing is correct. Okay, make sure it's in the correct format. You need to be very detailed. Look for grammatical errors and fix them. And again, read your essay or read your report or your writing aloud and have someone else read it as well to see if they are getting a clear meaning of it. Now, to do that, you can always come to our English tutoring lab on campus, and someone can read over your work there and just see if they're getting the same message. You can come actually at any stage of the writing process to the English tutoring lab for additional guidance. Okay? And finally, we have publishing. In the publishing phase, you are submitting your finished product. This is where you submit it to D2L and you say, Ms. Smith, this is my best possible work. Grade me. I am standing behind what I've done. Okay? And so this is that final step. I suggest you congratulate yourself on completing the writing process if you have actually used it, and then reflect on the process. What would you do differently next time? This is a learning process. And so these 5 steps will help you. Now, one thing I will say as we conclude about the writing process is that it's not necessarily linear and neat. It's not necessarily just step 1, then on to step 2, and so on and so forth. Okay? And so what you have to consider is that sometimes you may need let's say you've finished pre-writing, you've gone to drafting, and you may need to go back to pre-writing so that you can generate more ideas before you move forward. So it's not always linear. Sometimes it kind of has to double back a little bit more for you to move forward. Okay? So hopefully this has been helpful, but if you have questions, please let me know.